Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah An-Nisaa bihawlillahi wa quwwatih. We are on ayah number 49. قال الله تعالى ألم ترى إلى الذين يزكون أنفسهم بل الله يزكي من يشاء ولا يظلمون فتيلا. This question is addressing the Prophet. Have you not seen? It's a question of ta'ajjub, of shock and surprise, and it is also a question which arouses interest for what follows after the question. So this is the purpose of this question. Allah Jalla wa Ala never asks a question of inquiry, because that would contradict His all-knowing nature. Have you not seen those who make tazkiyah of themselves? That is to say, they speak highly of themselves. He's referring to the Yahud when they said that we are the children of Allah and His beloved ones, and also how they testify Jannah for themselves, where they say, لَن يَدْخُلَ الْجَنَّةَ إِلَّا مَنْ كَانَ هُودًا أَوْ نَصَارَى. As for Muslims, they testify Jannah for Muslims in general, but no Muslim will testify Jannah for himself individually and personally. And this is the mistake that the Christians, for example, make. They testify Jannah, or heaven as they call it, for themselves personally, thereby praising themselves. That is to say, praising themselves individually and personally. As for the Muslim, he does not say he will be in Jannah definitively, rather he says that he has genuine hope of being in Jannah, whereas the kuffar do not have genuine hope of being in Jannah. This is the correct response, as you do not know whether you will die upon Islam. And then even then, you do not know whether you will enter Jannah without first entering the fire. And even then, you still do not testify Jannah for yourself personally, because it could lead to pride and arrogance, which would then lead you to Jahannam. That's why you see that those companions who had Jannah testified for them did not speak about themselves being in Jannah. They just worked as you would normally expect them to work and strive in the way of Allah Jalla wa Ala as normal. They did not go around speaking or boasting of Jannah to other people. He says, Bal, meaning nay. Allah makes tazkiyah of whomsoever He wills, meaning He praises and sanctifies whomsoever Allah Jalla wa Ala wills, from those who are worthy of it. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. They will not be dealt with injustice. Dhulm is a word we have spoken about before. Fatilan, even to the extent of a fatil, and this is the thread you see on a date stone. Fatilan is mansub bil fatha. Okay, so why is it mansub? It is a description of a maf'ul mutlaq, which is mahdhuf. The maf'ul mutlaq is dhulman, so it would be وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ ظُلْمًا فَتِيلًا. The maf'ul mutlaq is simply a word which emphasizes the verb, in this case dhulm. It's simply an emphasis. It does not have to be present, but if it is, it simply emphasizes the verb being done. Okay, so reflecting on this ayah, we take that you should not be praising your own selves. Allah Jalla wa Ala is the one who praises people, those who deserve it. Each and every person should not praise their own selves, and that this is a trait of the Yahud and Nasara. Okay, what about tazkiyah of someone else? The Prophet in some narrations forbade praising others, and in other narrations he himself praised others. So the way to reconcile this is to say that if the person you're praising will not become proud, then you can praise that person, even in front of his face, if you know him to be worthy of such a praise. As for praising a person behind his back, then this is permissible, because he will not be subjected to the temptation of becoming proud. So this is a judgment issue, and if in doubt, you refrain from praising a person. We learn from this that Allah Jalla wa Ala is the one who sanctifies and purifies a soul, as tazkiyah means to purify something, and this can only be done by righteous actions and refraining from evil actions to the best of your ability, and by pleading to Allah Jalla wa Ala to sanctify your soul. as in the famous dua, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakkiha anta khayru man zakkaha anta waliyuha wa mawlaha. We also learned something about Allah Jalla wa Ala, that He has a will and that also He does not oppress anyone. The ayah says even oppressing them to the extent of a fatil. Okay, what about less than a fatil? The answer is He does not oppress at all, and that the fatil is simply an exaggeration to drive home the fact that He does not oppress at all. And like with all negated attributes, we affirm the complete opposite, and that is to say that Allah does not oppress in aught because He has perfect justice. Ayah number 50. انظر كيف يفترون على الله الكذب وكفى به إثما مبينا. انظر, look, how they يفترون, fabricate, على الله, against Allah, الكذب, the lie, وكفى به, and sufficient, به, it is, meaning this lie, as an إثما مبينا. Ithm meaning sin, mubin meaning clear. Ithm is mansub al-fatha because it is a tamyiz. It tells you in which way the lie is sufficient. Now this verb kafa yakfi in the Quran is different to others because its fa'il, the active participle, is oftentimes majroor, because the fa'il here is the ha, which means it, referring to the lie. And that's a weird one for a fa'il. But this is something specific to this verb kafa. It almost always is followed by bihi, or with a ba, which is a za'ida. It's an extra letter, meaning it did not have to be there. For example, you might hear kafa billahi shahida. You could have just said kafa Allahu shahidan. So the ba is extra. Okay, as always, the hardest part of the Quran is to know what the words are referring to. The ayah speaks about a lie being fabricated. What is the lie referring to? Where the Yahud say that they are the children of Allah and His beloved ones, and they will all be in Jannah, and that they are all purified and sanctified of their sins. This is the lie. And when Allah Jalla wa Ala says, undur, look, it's in order form. It implies ta'ajjub, meaning shock and surprise, as how can these people affirm sanctity for themselves, and yet they are denying the last prophet? Is this not shocking? Okay, so reflecting on this ayah, we can take that when something is strange and extraordinary, you should point that out to people, so they may know the right from the wrong, because the wrong or the misguided action is often extraordinary and makes no sense. We also find the enormous nature of lying against Allah Jalla wa Ala. So whenever we speak about Allah Jalla wa Ala, we need to make sure we have backing from authentic text, be it from the Quran or the authentic hadith. We're not allowed to just make stuff up with our own rationale. This will be lying against Allah Jalla wa Ala. Ayah number 51. Alam tara ila alladhina utu nasiban min al-kitabi yu'minuna bil-jibti wat-taghuti wa yaquluna lilladhina kafaru ha'ula'i ahda min alladhina amanu sabilan. So he opens this ayah by saying, have you not seen the one who are given a portion of the book? We have spoken about this before in ayah number 44, that opened in the same way. Remember, this is a question of ta'ajjub, of shock and surprise in a negative way. He says they yu'minun, they believe in al-jibt. Now there are various opinions about this, but the best that we can say about al-jibt is all that which is batil, all types of falsehood. So this would include sihr, it would include fortune telling or clairvoyancy, and many other of these examples which have been given. As for taghut, this is a well-known word, from tagha yatgha, tughyanan, to overstep the mark. It is all that which is worshipped besides Allah, all the false gods. In fact, we can broaden the meaning out and say that all that which is worshipped or followed or obeyed in opposition to Allah Jalla wa Ala. Then one might say, but Christians worship Isa alayhi salam. Are we going to say Isa alayhi salam is a taghut? Because that would be an insult, would it not, to the great prophet and messenger? We say Isa alayhi salam would not be happy to be a taghut, but the Christians have taken him to be a taghut, and that is outside the control of Isa alayhi salam. So therefore it is not an insult to Isa alayhi salam. Now the ayah is referring to the Yahud, as are the previous ayat, of course. And the ayah says, وَيَقُولُونَ, and they say, meaning the Yahud say, هَؤُلَاءِ, these people, referring to the mushrikun, أَهْدَى, are more guided, مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, than the believers, sabila. Sabilan is mansub al-fatha because it is a tamyiz of ahda, more guided. So in what way are they more guided? They are more guided in the path which they follow, meaning their deen. So the Yahud are saying to the mushrikun that you people, or mushrikun, are more rightly guided than the Muslims. And this is when they were making an alliance with each other. So what happened was that Abu Sufyan met up with Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, who was one of the leaders of the Yahud in Mecca, and he asked Ka'b, you are from the people of the book, as for us, Arab, we are illiterate, so you tell us, who is more guided, us or Muhammad? And Ka'b says, describe your deen to us. And so Abu Sufyan says that our deen is all about sacrificing animals for those who perform the Hajj. We give them water to drink. We show hospitality to the guests. We join ties of kinship. We populate the house of our Rabb, meaning the Kaaba. We make tawaf around the Kaaba. And we are the people of the Haram, that is the Haram of Mecca. And he says, Muhammad, he has left the deen of his forefathers. He has broken ties of kinship, that is to say, turned family members against each other, some mushrik and some Muslim. And he has left the Haram, and he has left his old religion. And his religion that he has come out with is a new religion. And so to this Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf replied to Abu Sufyan, Antum wallahi ahda sabilan mimma alayhi Muhammad. He says, you are, by Allah, more rightly guided than the religion that Muhammad is upon. And Allah Jalla wa Ala sends down this ayah. Ayah 52 carries on, أولئك الذين لعنهم الله ومن يلعن الله فلن تجد له نصيرا. أولئك, those are, meaning the Yahud, they are the ones whom Allah has cursed, لعنهم الله, and whomsoever Allah curses, فلن تجد له نصيرا, then you will not find a helper for him. The fa in the falan comes in the jawab of the shart, of the condition. So whomsoever Allah curses, then you will not find a helper for them. So reflecting on these two ayat, what do we take? We take the shocking nature and the ta'ajjub of those who are given the portion of the scripture. They have knowledge, and yet they believe in falsehood and taghut, making halal what Allah has made haram, and vice versa, and listening to the speech of their knowledgeable ones which opposes the commandments of Allah Jalla wa Ala, and how they say that the mushrikun are more guided than the Muslimin, where they know that this is wrong, but they just do it for worldly gains, because it is more convenient and because they can make allies and they can gain wealth and political power, all of this type of ephemeral, transitory pleasures. This is what they give precedence to. And so how could it not be shocking when you see people so short-sighted that they cannot see beyond the enticements of this world? We also learn how much hatred the Yahud had against the Muslimin in those times, and that nothing has changed during these times. We would find, at least from a large portion of the Yahud, a great hatred for the Muslimin. We find this from many Christians as well. We may also take from this that anyone who deems the kuffar to be better and superior to the Muslims as a whole has this trait of the Yahud. and that such a person is simply showing his true colors. We also find that Allah curses the kuffar. We find this in many ayat, but in this ayah also there is evidence that Allah curses those who prefer the kuffar to the Muslimin, and generally speaking the kuffar are cursed. That does not mean that we are allowed to curse anyone individually in particular, so taking it down to a personal level, that's not permissible, but we are allowed to say that all the kuffar are cursed. And from this then, we need to seek refuge from kufr and kufr ideologies. هذا والله أعلم.